There's one career Army guy whose opinion I respect more than others, Colonel Alan West, who I'm happy to say is joining us right now to tell us whether it was the right thing. Alan, I appreciate you being here. Colonel, was it the right thing for him to accept McChrystal's resignation?
Well, good morning to you, Jeff, and good morning to your listening audience out there. And before I get into that, I just want to let everyone know that today is the 60th anniversary of the start of the Korean War, so let us not have that become the forgotten war, as many people have called it. And when I look at the decision that was made with General Stanley McChrystal, I think that there was another course of action that could have been taken instead of allowing this media circus that has evolved around it. Very simply, you could have looked at those two or three staff officers. They could have gotten letters of reprimand, local letters of reprimand. There could have been a very stern, severe verbal reprimand to General Stanley McChrystal. And then the president comes out and says, this issue is over. I've taken care of it with this general. He is over there in Afghanistan. He is doing his best to implement my strategy and ensure that we have victory and success in Afghanistan. And one of the things I did, Jeff, was I went back and kind of studied U.S. history as far as altercations between generals and commanders-in-chief. And, of course, I looked at Lincoln and McClellan, and then, of course, Truman and MacArthur. And those gentlemen were relieved of command and taken out of those theaters of operations because they were not implementing the commander-in-chief's guidance. They were disobeying his orders. So I think that, we have to be a little bit more circumspect, a little bit more mature in who we are as the strategic leadership and civilian leadership of this country. And we have to understand this, that the most important goal is that we have victory in Afghanistan, which all of a sudden Secretary Gates is not able to address what victory means. And I think that this thing has gotten totally blown out of proportion, but it has brought light to the situation in Afghanistan.
Well, and when General Stanley McChrystal talks about the wimps in the White House, you read between the lines, and what we're being told basically is that the toughest man inside the administration is Hillary Clinton.
Well, I think what you have to realize is that General Stanley McChrystal, almost 35 years of service, this guy's the ultimate warrior. He's a Green Beret. He's a Ranger. He's been with Delta Force, and he's a tough nut. And you look at what he did as Commander of Special Operations in Iraq. I mean, he went out there. He's the guy that was responsible for the finding and the killing of Zarqawi, the head of Al-Qaeda. So this is how things are in the military. But I think the biggest, most egregious part of this was trusting the Rolling Stone. And I think that was the real lesson learned, not the failure in strategy, not a failure to implement the strategy, but a failure to, realize that the Rolling Stone was not a friendly partner and probably was, quote-unquote, off the record, but still reporting comments being made.
Well, I thought one of the interesting things, though, was that the reporter for Rolling Stone, we have an interview with him that we listened to, where he basically says he was in a meeting and he realized that the president was clueless. He had no idea what a counterinsurgency meant.
Well, and I don't know are we going to fire the reporter from the Rolling Stone, but this is one very important thing that I have run into out here on the campaign trail. The American people are starting to get very concerned about the people who say they are the civilian leaders, because the most important title for the President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief. We've got to get people that start to understand not just the strategic level of operations, but also the tactical level of operations, because your decisions up there affect what happens with the men and the women on the ground. And this is not just something that is occurring administration, but this is a concern that the American people are starting to see. And it's also a concern when you look at Congress, where once upon a time, coming out of World War II, we had 80% of folks up there that had military experience. Now we're down to less than 20%.
Colonel Alan West joins us, a distinguished military man running for Congress down in South Florida as well. Let me ask you this as a concluding question. General McChrystal, according to many who were in the military, said McChrystal's speaking to Rolling Stone was wrong, saying what he said openly was wrong, but they said privately, down to from the generals down to the privates, everyone in the military just about would agree with his assessment of those guys in the White House.
And that is correct. I mean, this is not something new to me. I mean, I'm still on a lot of military chat rooms and internet email exchanges, and a lot of those sentiments are out there. And this comes back to a self-assessment for this president and this administration, where I think the real lesson learned is, are they going to stop and look at themselves and say, we've got to do better because our perception out there is not very strong. And if they continue to convey this weakness, it's not just we who see this, but it's also our enemies who see this.